Welcome to Pregnancy Help Podcast. I'm Christine Grimmett, and in this episode, we have a special guest, Arina Grossu, and we also have Matthew Doane. He's our staff attorney here at Heartbeat International, and Danielle White, who is our legal counsel. So before we get started, I'd like to mention that we have an upcoming training happening at Heartbeat International, actually at our Columbus, Ohio office. At the end of July 25th through 29th, we are hosting the Pregnancy Help Institute. This includes 3 intensive tracks: the new director, development, and leadership. And we also are including at the same time that week is the Love Approach ultrasound training. So some really great experiences you can get, small group setting with professionals in the pregnancy help ministry. You don't want to miss this. Heartbeatservices.org, right on the homepage, there's a big banner. You can't miss it with information. So registration is now open, so I encourage you to check that out.
All right, thank you, Christine. I'm excited to introduce Arina Grossu. Ms. Grossu is a fellow with the Discovery Institute's Center on Human Exceptionalism and founder and principal with Areté Global Consulting. Ms. Grossu was the Senior Communications Advisor for the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services Office for Civil Rights under the Trump administration. We're excited to have her today. She's a frequent lecturer on pro-life topics, human exceptionalism, rights of conscience. So we're excited to have her today. So to get us started, I'm going to turn it over to Danielle White, our General Counsel, to kick us off.
Yeah. So Arina, I'm wondering if we could start by just hearing your story.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me on. So I actually became pro-life when I was in high school. I was turning into a budding feminist in the worst way possible until I saw a video of an abortion in my 9th grade theology class. And that really changed my heart, changed even what I ended up doing. I actually ended up starting to do praying and counseling outside of an abortion facility in New Jersey, where I grew up. And I went on to lead the pro-life group in my high school. I ended up doing the same at Notre Dame and in college. And then I moved to DC, where I ended up actually working for a PR firm, handling a lot of the issues on life issues for various groups, the big national pro-life groups. And then I ended up at the Family Research Council as a spokeswoman on life issues. So it kind of led throughout my life, but each of those different steps prepared me for the next part.
That's really neat. I think something that's very interesting to think about is the impact that that happens when you have a whole generation of people who have grown up seeing the humanity of the unborn. That was one thing that just occurred to me as you were telling your story, that seeing that image, seeing the humanity of the unborn child really impacted your views on this matter. And I think that that's just so important for getting to the heart of what is going on, for helping women to be able to make informed choices and to really be able to see the images of their unborn children is just so critical and so life-changing.
Yes. And actually, I think that the ultrasound is a very powerful tool we have. And I love it that pregnancy centers use ultrasounds. That is why Planned Parenthood and abortion facilities try to keep the image of the child away from the moms, just to separate the mom from the child. So obviously it was the image that affected me, but I think that the most effective tools out there pro-lifers have are, for example, I know that Live Action put together the illustrations, and they're not graphic, the illustrations of what abortion procedures do to the baby. And they did the man on the street type interviews where they asked people how they felt about abortion just in theory, and then showed a video of what abortion actually does and how even on the spot changed hearts and minds. So I do think that, since we have truth on our side, we have science on our side with the ultrasounds, and these are tools that we have. And I think that the trends that we see, pro-life trends that we see, are a direct result of the fact that we can have a window into the womb with ultrasound. And also we do have science behind us. We know that life begins at sperm egg fusion. That's the exact moment in fertilization when life begins. And so we are on the side of life. We're on the side of science. And I think we have to continue using all those tools as we continue building a culture of life.
Yeah, it's interesting. What you're describing is forming consciences, right? It's forming consciences by giving people all of the information that they need to be able to have a well-formed conscience on this issue. And that kind of brings me to your work with conscience protections and the threat to the rights to conscience, the rights to for us to follow our well-informed conscience. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Sure. So I worked under the Trump administration for over 3 years at Health and Human Services, Office for Civil Rights, and I helped with the Conscience and Religious Freedom Division. And a lot of people don't know that we have federal laws that protect the rights of conscience of healthcare professionals, as well as individuals and patients. And these laws, some of them are passed with bipartisan support decades ago, and they were just not being enforced, or they were under-enforced under the Obama administration and prior administrations. And when we started the Conscience and Religious Freedom Division, we wanted to make sure that these laws that were passed by Congress were actually enforced, because if a law is just words on paper, it's not really doing anything, and it has to have the enforcement behind it. So some of the actions we took while under the Trump administration was to give a violation to the University of Vermont Medical Center because they actually violated the rights of conscience of one nurse who made her objections known that she did not want to participate in abortions. And under pain of losing her job, she was actually forced to participate in an abortion. And the doctor who had called her in to that procedure, and she did not know it was an abortion procedure, actually said when she walked in, "Don't hate me for doing this." So obviously he knew that she had a conscience objection to it. She was forced on the spot to make a decision, and she filed a complaint with the Office for Civil Rights afterwards, because obviously she was very traumatized by the experience. So even though under the current administration that violation has been dropped, it is my hope that people, especially in the healthcare field, whose rights of conscience have been violated, will continue to file conscience complaints. They can still do so even now, and I would really encourage people to do so. They would go to hhs.gov/conscience and file a complaint there. But we did a lot of different types of work and investigations pertaining to pregnancy centers. We actually gave violations to both the state of California and the state of Hawaii because they were trying to force pregnancy centers in both of the states to refer for abortion. Again, this is against the conscience protections that Congress has afforded. These are federal laws on the books. And Hawaii came into compliance and actually did not, no longer forced pregnancy centers in Hawaii to refer for abortions, and California was still problematic. But the fact that there is an office, even that stands today at HHS, that protects the rights of conscience of healthcare workers is an important step. And I think that as we see more of these threats coming down the pike, and even for medical students who want to just practice medicine according to the Hippocratic Oath, it's important for people to know that there are federal laws like Weldon and Coates Snow and other laws that protect conscience, and they should be empowered by that because they do have rights.
Yeah. So I want to swing back to something you said. You stated that you helped to start the Conscience and Religious Freedom Division. Is it so that division did not exist prior to the Trump administration? Is that, or was it just revamped, or how did that all work?
Well, so I helped with the launch of it. The Conscience and Religious Freedom did not exist before the Trump administration. The free exercise of religion in healthcare was supposed to be under the Civil Rights Division that existed already. There were two divisions, the HIPAA Division and Civil Rights Division at the Office for Civil Rights. It did not have a dedicated division, and there were a lot of investigations that didn't happen or were just closed that should not have necessarily have gone in that direction. So I think that it was under enforced or unenforced. So when the Conscious Religious Freedom Division started, we had a public education campaign about all the conscience laws that exist, and to empower people to know that they can file a complaint with OCR. And it was just a really interesting time to see how many people's rights had been violated, but they didn't know that there was any recourse for them. And so it was just for us, it was just a beautiful time of seeing how we can help to make sure that people's rights were vindicated, especially since there were violations against the law. So it was, again, the Conscious and Religious Freedom Division still stands to this day, and we hope that it'll continue to stand, because conscience and religious freedom rights are very important, and they should not be ignored based on some ideology, etc. I think that just like with any other case for discrimination, that people should not lose their jobs because they want to practice according to the Hippocratic Oath, or be sidelined. I know that some medical schools actually have an opt-out versus an opt-in so a lot of medical schools now force students to have to do abortion training, and they would have to opt out of it and sometimes go before their professors or boards to say why they don't want that training, when instead it should be that if they want to do abortion training, that they opt into that as opposed to have to opt out of it, because it's very scary, especially for a medical student getting started, to have to defend himself or herself and just basic belief that, no, I don't want to train for to do abortions. That's not something that I will ever encounter in my life, and nothing I want to be part of. And this goes across the board. This goes for even people in the insurance industry who don't want to cover abortions, or pharmacists and others in the healthcare field. And so I think that we will see, especially under this administration, I think that it'll be very interesting to see what happens to how these laws are enforced, or whether they're not enforced. But just it's important for people to know that these laws exist and that they're meant to protect them.
Yeah, so Matt and I work together to help advise pregnancy centers specifically. So Matt, I'd love to hear your reaction to what you're hearing here and how you think that impacts pregnancy centers, and what our pregnancy center listeners should be taking away from what they're hearing. What do you think? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that, what Arina mentioned it briefly, but I think this just isn't well known, or as well known as it should be, that there are federal protections for healthcare professionals that do not, that have a conscious objection to abortion procedures. I just don't think that's as out there as it should be. One thing that I wanted Arina to maybe expand on just briefly is if she can maybe share, well, what is the recourse for an individual that their conscience has been violated, such as the nurse from the University of Vermont, and they file a complaint with HHS, with the Office of Civil Rights. What is their recourse? What can they expect in that process? Is it job protection? How does that kind of play out?
Sure. So the first part of it is to file a conscience complaint at hhs.gov/conscience. Again, it shouldn't be that federal laws are enforced based on who's in office. It should be that federal laws are enforced no matter who's in office, because these are laws that have been passed by Congress. I'm not sure exactly what will happen now, but generally these complaints are supposed to be investigated, looked into the issues that are presented. The parties that are involved go through an interview process, etc. And so it's important to file the complaint because these remain in the database for HHS, and it's important that people continue to exercise their right to, one, file a complaint, and two, to ask questions as to what is being done with the complaint. So there are no promises right now, but it is important that people exercise their rights and that they make their conscious objections known. Because if they don't, then these agencies will conclude that there are no conscience objections, and that's problematic. If there are conscience objections and people's jobs are on the line, or just their conscience, their ability to even just live according to their conscience, those are things that should be made official and through an official complaint process. The people who file complaints, their information is kept anonymous. So if people are afraid of repercussions, that there are laws that also protect against repercussions for coming out to make these objections. Of course, in the process of an investigation, if an investigation were to take place, the entities would be questioned. So it is possible that the entity that is at the subject of the complaint might know who filed a complaint against them if that person has already been vocal to the entity. So it's not a complete immunity, but the names and the information of the people filing complaints is kept private, even for example, when requests are made for data coming out of any agency.
So I think what I'm hearing is that pregnancy centers need to A, be aware that these things are out there, and B, not be afraid to speak up. And I think that's what you're encouraging, people that are healthcare providers, practitioners in this area. It's okay to have a conscientious objection to these types of procedures and issues, and to speak out when something does violate that. But no, I think that's great. And so I'd just be interested to hear, so when you transitioned from HHS, where did you go from there and what happened?
So I ended up actually starting my own consulting company, Areté Global Consulting, where I work with mostly nonprofits doing pro-life work and helping them with strategic communications, policy work, partnerships, and growth. And that brings together my expertise in communications. Obviously, that's what I did for HHS and at the PR firm and at Family Research Council, but also my background in bioethics. I'm working on a PhD in bioethics. I do research in bioethics. And as well as having been in the DC metro area for a number of years, I've worked with a number of national and state groups that work on these issues, especially on human dignity issues, also religious freedom. And I think it's important for, especially at a time like this, that groups come together where there's a collaboration of efforts, of threats to their existence, that they come and work together. And so I work with groups, whether they're starting out or whether they've been around for a number of years and are looking to grow their presence, and I work with them in that way. And one more thought too about the conscience protections. It's important, some of the conscience protections that exist are based on people's religious beliefs. Some are based on no belief at all, except that they're against abortion. And it's not just limited to abortion either. It could be against having to participate in sterilizations or even assisted suicide. And so it kind of covers some of the human dignity spectrum. And again, there are some protections even just for students, medical students who don't want to participate in specific trainings that go against their conscience. I just wanted to mention that as well, because I do think it's important for people to know that these protections are kind of broad in that way as well.
I think this is really timely as we do prepare for the Dobbs decision. And Christine referenced that in her intro, that we might talk about the leak out of the Supreme Court. So I think this information is especially timely as we start to think about how states might respond to a an overruling of Roe, what we might see from the pro-abortion states, what we might see from the pro-life states. As I think about the response from pro-abortion states, I definitely think that conscience, that attacks on conscience rights are in that deck. They're in the hands of those who are opposed to the work that pregnancy centers are doing, the work that pro-life doctors are doing, those who may wish to decrease their impact, I think could use these types of laws, I think of the law in Illinois, which is currently being challenged, but that requires healthcare providers to refer for abortions. And I think we could see more of that. So this conversation, I think, is particularly timely as we contemplate a post-Roe America.
Exactly. And actually, before we even talk about this leaked document, I did want to mention that there are two imminent threats to conscience protections right now. So the same office I worked in for those 3 years is preparing to come out with two regulations that will undo conscience protections and other kinds of protections. There is a regulation on Section 1557, and we know that at least in it hasn't come out yet, so we don't know the exact text, but just from things that have already come out of HHS that reference what they are going to do, it will not only try to say that sex discrimination will include gender identity, etc., but it will basically, under the pain of discrimination, force entities, healthcare entities, to participate in those types of things, and also abortion. So we know that there are rumblings that this regulation will include those types of language, that type of language in it. There's also the conscience rule that HHS put out while I was there. There is also is in the process of being rescinded. So we don't know what this will mean for conscience. Again, this must be fought by individuals and by entities, by pregnancy centers, by individuals working at pregnancy centers, and various people. Once these two rules come out, which will probably be in the next few weeks, we would encourage that everyone write public comments. There's usually a 30 to 60-day comment period where individuals and entities can do comments. And because both of these involve conscience, and they will involve, to some extent, pregnancy centers, I do think it's important that they will respond. Now, obviously, with this leaked document, we are very hopeful for a post-Roe America come June, or maybe earlier. In fact, my recommendation would be that the majority opinion should be published. It shouldn't wait till June. Originally, we thought it would be, we would hear back by end of June, but because of this leaked court document, I think it would be important for the Supreme Court to just come out with a majority opinion. They could always put out the dissent later. But I think that if things percolate, the people who are very unhappy with this direction will make it very difficult, and will probably put undue pressure, just even public pressure, on the justices. And this is a threat to the rule of law. So I do see this as obviously problematic. Chief Justice Roberts even called this leak an egregious breach of trust. But I do think that once this decision comes out, and hopefully the justices stay firm in their decision, when we look at a post-Roe America, pregnancy centers will be impacted a lot, because there will be a lot of women who will choose life, or want to choose life, or just given the situation of what will happen in a post-Roe America. And I can talk also about just the effect of what mini post-Roe America looks like right now in Texas because of the Texas heartbeat law. But I do think that pregnancy centers and the pro-life world has been preparing for this moment. We really hope that this is what will happen, and maybe the justices will publish the majority opinion sooner rather than later, and we should just pray for their safety, pray for their steadfastness in all of this. But we do need to prepare to be able to help moms and their babies.
Yeah, it's definitely a very timely reminder to pray. I think the prayer needs have only intensified, if that was even possible. Well, I would love to talk about all of this a little bit more, but I'm eyeing our time and thinking it might be time to wind down. So, Arina, you're aware of a resource that you'd like to share with the pregnancy centers?
Sure, yes. So I have published a research paper through the Charlotte Lozier Institute, looking at all the pro-life bills that have been introduced in 2022 or in the current legislative session, as well as the pro-life laws that have already been passed in 2022. And just like that we've seen in years past, there's just been a huge number of pro-life bills and laws that have been introduced and passed. In 2022, there's been 42 states that have introduced 417 pro-life bills, and there's also been 12 states that have enacted 15 pro-life bills in 2022. And the bills that have already been introduced, they contain a lot of pro-life provisions. I would say a total of over 600 pro-life provisions. So again, America has been trending pro-life for a long time. Our bills show that, our laws show that. And I think that even as we continue to build a pro-life culture at the state level, this is a great resource for people to know about as they might want to know what in their state has been done or what efforts there are to pass pro-life bills.
That's so exciting and just really encouraging. Can you say again for our listeners where they can find that resource?
That resource is at Charlotte Lozier Institute, and it's an overview of pro-life bills in 2022. And I believe there will be a link to that made available.
Okay, so let's end with a story. Tell us about a person who changed the way that you do life or work.
Sure. So I actually just came back from the funeral mass of Deirdre McQuaid, who is a pro-life champion. She worked at the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops for 12 and a half years, being a pro-life advocate. And I've had the pleasure and honor of calling her friend and being with her even in the last week and a half of her life. And I just share that because she is someone of deep faith, but someone who really cared about the pro-life issues. But she was pro-life in the way that she treated people. And she was hospitable. She loved community. She loved to be with others and make them feel heard. And one of the ways that people described her is that when you were talking to her, there was no one else in the room but you. And I just think about that, especially even with the work that all the pregnancy centers do, that they're helping women who find themselves in really scary situations, and they are this life and source of hope for these women. And I encourage you that it just takes making a difference to one person, and that just by listening to them with love and walking with them, that you can make all the difference. And so I want to pay a little tribute to Deirdre McQuaid and her beautiful way that she did so much for the pro-life movement, but also just for individuals, including her friends and family.
All right. Well, I think that's a great way to wrap up this episode. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. And again, those links will be in the show notes, so please check those out. And also subscribe so that you never miss an episode. We have a lot more coming up on the Dobbs case. We know that there is more to come, lots of updates. So with that, we wish you all a great rest of your day. And thanks for listening to this episode of the Pregnancy Help Podcast.